What's up everyone? Patch 12.11 has been released and it's basically part 2 of the durability patch. There's a lot of questions about what Viego is going to be building this patch, and I'm here to answer all your questions, so let's begin. Now before I get into the actual builds, I want to talk about the items that got changed this patch. First off is Death Stance, our beloved, most broken item in the game, Death Stance. Now unfortunately it did get nerfed from 140% healing to 120% bonus AD healing. Now the thing is that what Death Stance is so good at is that it prevents you from getting bursted. If Viego can't get one shot, he can get resets, and he can do so much within a team fight. Now, the heal will be missed, and it is actually a pretty decent nerf, but the reality is that as long as they don't nerf the actual bleed, Death Stance is always going to be good on Viego. So I wouldn't freak out too much about Death Stance. It is a little bit of a nerf, but it's still going to be an item that you're pretty much going to want to buy in every game. Next is Blade of the Ruined King. Now it goes from 7% lifesteal to 8% lifesteal, which is basically just reverting the nerf that they did on the patch 12.10 update. The lifesteal is probably the least important quality of the item. The damage that it gives you and the proc that it gives you is what you really build it for. So it getting more lifesteal doesn't really make it that much better. It's a welcome buff, but nothing too crazy. Next is Maw Malmortius. Now it is getting 15 seconds increased onto its cooldown, but realistically, that's not that big of a nerf. The thing that I think impacts Maw Malmortius is the fact that Steric's Gauge is getting buffed. Basically, Steric's Gauge is just getting buffed around the board. It's giving you a little bit more AD. It's also giving you more HP on the shield. Steric's has kind of fallen out of favor, but if you remember, Steric's used to be an item that Viego pretty much purchased every game in every build. And I think that this buff actually does put this item back on the map. In a lot of games where Maw isn't the greatest option, you'll still build it anyways, even if they only have 1 or 2 AP. But now Steric's Gauge being buffed again gives you the option to choose Steric's Gauge over Maw. As you know, they're both lifeline items, so you can only choose one or the other. I think that Steric's will actually be a much more viable item on this patch than it was before. Both items will still be good this patch, just choose them based on the game. Now for Kraken Slayer. Kraken Slayer is losing 10 damage on its proc, its 3 auto proc, and 5% bonus AD. So the thing is that this nerf really isn't as big of a deal as some people are making it. Some people are saying that this just pretty much makes Kraken Slayer unbuildable on this patch. The reality is that this item is still going to be really good. Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver is still incredibly broken, and to be honest, Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver against all the tank items that just got buffed, I probably will continue to build it as I've been building it in 12.10. As much as I hate the fact that the item is getting nerfed, if you look at it closely and actually break down the numbers, Kraken Slayer, it's still going to be a completely viable item, an amazing item. Now, I'm not going to go into the tank items too much because they're not super relevant to Viego, although there's a couple things I want to point out. For one, all the tank items are basically getting buffed, so a lot of them are getting increased armor, increased MR, they're getting increased HP. Basically, tank items are going to be more valuable, which makes you have to consider the fact that Divine Sunderer will be more valuable, Black Cleaver Kraken Slayer will be more valuable. These items will just be more valuable in the sense that there will be more HP and armor in the game for you to shred. The one thing I want you guys to take a look at is Turbo Chemtank. So this item is 2800 gold. It's an incredibly cheap mythic, and it gives you 450 HP on top of the proc that everybody knows back in the day when Akali was super broken with Turbo Chemtank actually does quite a bit of damage. There's a little bit of a hidden build with Turbo Chemtank that I think I'm going to be trying out and maybe making more videos about in the future. I've tested it out a couple times and I actually really like it. More about that later. So the first build I want to go over is the Divine Sunderer build. Now this build is always going to be viable on Viego unless Divine Sunderer receives like a massive nerf or something. For one, Bork got buffed this patch, so obviously rushing that item is going to be good. And also a lot of tank items got buffed in the game. There's more HP, so Divine Sunderer is going to be more valuable. Unfortunately, Death Stance and Maw did receive nerfs. They're not huge nerfs, but they did receive nerfs, which means that your 3rd and 4th items are not going to be as valuable as they were on 12.10. Now, you could make the argument that the Steric's Gauge buff actually can replace the purchase of Maw in a lot of cases. I would actually recommend replacing Maw with Steric's Gauge in a lot of games, especially if they don't have heavy magic damage. And honestly, if you don't really know what to build, you don't have a lot of confidence in going Kraken Slayer or other builds, just go Divine Sunderer. It's gonna do you well. It's consistent. The next build I want to go over is Kraken Slayer. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this new build with Kraken Slayer, which is basically Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver. Now, to be honest, I love this build. I've been playing it 100% of the time on patch 12.10, and I was very sad to hear that Kraken Slayer is receiving a nerf. But I will say that I actually do believe that this build will still be viable. The reason why I think this is, first off, the Kraken Slayer nerf is pretty big, but it's not so big that it destroys the item. The real reason why I like this build is because it's Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver. I really like Black Cleaver, and I don't think Black Cleaver fits into any other build unless you build Kraken Slayer. So Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver I think will still be very valuable. There's a lot more armor in the game, a lot of tank items got buffed, so it means that Black Cleaver is just going to be a more valuable item, and Kraken Slayer with the true damage plus Black Cleaver just makes you really good against these beefy targets. I'll probably be running it in most of my games. We'll see how some of the other builds play out, but I really think that Kraken Slayer into Black Cleaver will still be really good. Now for a bit of a fun build, Turbo Chemtank. Now I know this build will on paper seem pretty troll, but if you remember back when Akali was super broken with Turbo Chemtank, a lot of people don't realize that Viego was actually also pretty good for the exact same reasons. Now Bork plus Turbo Chemtank both received buffs this patch, and so there's a lot of reason to actually build Turbo Chemtank. It's really cheap, makes you very tanky, it gives you a lot of chase down potential on targets, especially versus high mobility teams. There is actually a lot of reason to build this item. I think this build's really good. If you want to try it, have some fun in some normal games, don't be surprised if it creeps up as a hidden OP build this patch. Let me briefly go over Trinity Force, Eclipse, and Shield Bow because I don't really think these items are going to be very viable this patch. I know a lot of people are saying Trinity Force is super good right now, but the thing is with all the HP and tank items getting buffed, Divine Sunderer is probably going to outperform Trinity Force in most games, and then the games where you would build Trinity Force into more squishy teams, I think that Kraken Slayer is actually better. So I don't really think Trinity Force fits in. I would either go Divine Sunderer, Kraken, Eclipse, until they buff lethality items, probably won't be very good, potentially could be good in the future, and Shield Bow I think is just honestly a worse version of Kraken Slayer or Divine Sunderer right now. So I wouldn't build any of these three mythics. You can if you want to, you could probably still get away with it, but to be honest, I don't think they're very good, and I'd go with the other two, or even three builds. That's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope you guys now understand a little bit better on what to build this patch. If you didn't understand something or you want me to clarify something, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll respond to any questions that you guys have. I hope you guys do enjoy, and good luck on patch 12.11.